New Zealand businesses through the Chamber of Commerce and meeting together and having a good breakfast and catch up. But with that, happy to take any questions you have.
Last night, in your statement you made at the Palace, you said that New Zealand and the Philippines are committed to stepping up our defence relationship, and you mentioned getting officials to get the legal underpinnings in place for our militaries to be able to work together. What does that mean in practice?
Well, look, across the region, across Southeast Asia, we have strong defence ties. If you think about the arrangements we have in, say, Singapore or Malaysia, we don't have similar arrangements here in the Philippines. And so what we need to do is get some actually foundational legal documentation in place so that we can actually transit through, for example, Philippine airports with aircraft. So when you think about humanitarian assistance or other things like that, actually that's quite difficult to do without those documents in place. And so that's what we're working on. It's something that actually the previous government, I think, have been working on since 2020, and we'll continue to work through that.
We're an observer to the military exercises that the US and Philippines are holding together. Would the documentation that you're talking about allow us to be part of that rather than an observer?
Well, potentially, but that would be quite premature for us to, we'd have to think about that down the road, obviously. Sure, but we've got our own independent foreign policy and we'll make our own decisions. But initially, none of that's possible. Certainly, the aid piece, as well as any potential participation in events like that, is difficult for us without those agreements in place.
It does make it more likely, though, does it, that we could get drawn into the South China Sea conflict?
Well, no, not getting drawn in. I mean, what we're talking about is actually enabling transit to happen through those kind of agreements. So let's be clear what it is. It's just the foundational documents around what's a statement of forces and also what's called a mutual logistics agreement. We've got to get those things sorted before we get any further down the road.
But aside from maybe it not being on the cards, the decision not being made to join in on the exercises, would the legal documentation allow us to be part of it should your government decide?
Potentially, yes. But it also enables a lot of other things that are important to us. So being able to participate in humanitarian relief, which is something that we've done in the past, we'd want to be able to do that, and that just gives us ability to be able to use facilities here, for example, runways and airports and things like that. So it's a as you think about it, across Southeast Asia, as I said, we've had long-standing defence ties with Singapore and Malaysia that are quite well developed. Here in the Philippines, there's been a desire to be able to make sure we can facilitate some of that too and deepen our ties here as well.
And to be clear, we couldn't be part of it.
Sorry?
And to be clear, we couldn't be part of those exercises at the moment?
Well, again, that's not something that's been part of our consideration set. Yes, we may have observer roles and things like that, but at the moment our focus is on we don't have very development defence ties with the Philippines. And as I said, the first thing is to make sure that we continue to progress on these two documents that enable us to actually have the framework, the legal framework in place to be able to transit through here.
Did you raise human rights concerns with President Marcos?
No, but we discussed a lot of concerns around the region in particular. We talked a lot about people-to-people links, and we talked a lot about economic challenges here. I'd just say, I think under President Marcos it's quite obvious that he's a huge respecter of the international rule of law and that he is, I think, making positive steps.
But is he really a huge respecter of international law? Because he's refusing to cooperate with the International Crime Commission, I think, I've forgotten the exact name, that's investigating the war on drugs here and the thousands and thousands of extrajudicial killings.
The Philippines will have its own reaction and policies around those things. I can't comment on those things. All I'm saying is that what I observed is, as a new leader coming into the Philippines, he has been quite strident about making sure that the rule of law is something that he and his government are very much focused on, and making sure that they enshrine and embed more strongly into the Philippines and their interactions with others around the world too.
But should we be working more closely with the military when this government has killed so many of their own people?
Look, I think that's what we do is we work with our partners across the region, across the world. We have trading relationships with many countries. We raise our concerns where we have them, predictably, consistently, publicly, privately.
You said you didn't bring up human rights.
Well, our focus was really on other things in this conversation, and we were focused very much on talking about how we, regional tensions was a big part of our conversation, as well as obviously how we advance the New Zealand-Philippines relationship.
Did you, how was staying at the Palace palace last night. Did you spend time with the President following the gala dinner?
No. I mean, it's essentially a guest house for visiting heads of state. It was a tremendous honour. It's the first time I was the first leader to be invited to stay there. And again, I think what you saw yesterday was the Philippines showing us tremendous hospitality and warmth, wanting from their point of view to deepen the relationship with New Zealand as well. As I talked about it before with the business delegation in our fireside chat just in the last event, this is the Philippines is well positioned for the coming decades in Southeast Asia. As I've said before, 110 million people, fastest growing economy in Southeast Asia, average age of its population 25. New Zealand is also well positioned for the future, and so really this has been an underserved relationship, and really what this visit's been about is making sure we put those relationships in place, we start to form linkages, certainly for our businesses to start to get to know each other and think about the areas where we can collaborate and actually build out good futures for both our countries.
There was a bit of feedback given yesterday from the business delegation, from a member from the business delegation regarding this language used around New Zealand business. Have you taken that feedback on board? What did you think?
What was it about, sorry?
Using things like being open for business or
under new management.
Well, it's true. I mean, we've had a great position in New Zealand and the region for some time, but we are stepping it up big time. We're putting a lot more intensity, a lot more urgency, a lot more ambition and aspiration to what we're doing. So with respect to that, we are open for business. We are under new management because we are driving very positively into a much bigger future for New Zealand.
Do you recognise this feedback that it's perhaps unhelpful to those businesses that have been doing really well on the international stage, and you saying that we're now open for business makes it look like we weren't trying?
I disagree. I think what we're saying is that we're just stepping up the intensity with more ambition. We know we've got fantastic businesses that have been doing a great job. We know we've got a good foundation in the region. We are bringing new intensity and new urgency to it.
What's the point of bringing a business delegation for their feedback if you're not going to listen to their feedback?
Well, I talk to the business delegation all the time. I know many of them very, very well. But what I was just saying to you, I wouldn't construe those comments in that way. I would just say to you very clearly that it's an and. We're building on what's come from before, but we're also having a big ambition. We want to double our exports again in the next 10 years. That's hard work. It's really tough work. It's really difficult to do. It doesn't just happen by autopilot automatically. It needs political leadership. It needs business leadership to come together and to do that job. And that's what you've seen us do over the course of this week.
Nearing the end of the trip,
Yes.
Nearing the end of the trip, what are your reflections on it? How do you think it's gone? Have you met your KPIs?
Well, I think all of us are leaving here fairly energised. It's been a fantastic 5 days. We've put a lot into the program. Each and every day has been full on. I think the first day, I think we had 16 hours of meetings in Thailand alone in that day. And so, it's been huge focus and huge energy. But, I mean, you come away really excited and energised about the future for New Zealand. There is no reason why our country can't do exceptionally well for itself in the coming decades. As I keep saying, we are bang smack in this middle of this region called the Indo-Pacific. We've got rapidly rising middle classes. We've got strong institutions at home. We've got a modern multicultural country built on the strong bicultural foundations. We have everything to play for. And so you come back home, very energised about, what a fantastic set of opportunities New Zealand has going forward. Yes, there are challenges in the world. Yes, it's a very challenging environment. But we should go forward with a lot of positivity, a lot of playing on the front foot with everything to play for.
For you personally, have you learned anything? Obviously, a lot of firsts for you. First overseas trade mission, business mission?
Yeah, I've been part of trade missions in the past, obviously in a different capacity, and so it's been good to be able to take a high-quality trade delegation and business delegation with us. People from small businesses, as I've said, to large, to public, to private, to lots of different sectors, and it's been fantastic. And we just signed another couple of agreements today, around renewable energy, and it's just exciting to see growth. There's nothing more energising than that.
And the foreign policy, I mean, that would be, the grand welcomes, the official welcomes, the brass bands. That must be fairly new for you as well, is it?
Well, look, I mean, it may well be, but I've enjoyed every aspect of it. I mean, I think it's, again, that my job, as I've said at the very beginning with the delegation at the original brief, was that, my job is to make sure that I am building good rapport and good relationship with the leaders at a top-to-top level so that we can actually get the settings and the conditions right for our businesses and for others to come in and actually take those opportunities. And so, no, I've enjoyed, building relationships with these leaders. Some of them I had known before, and I'd got to know in opposition, and others that I've met for, in this case, I knew all three leaders.
Well, President,
last questions, please.
All three countries have relatively new leaders. And
Sorry?
All three countries have a relatively new leaders, and you are quite a new leader. Does that create an opportunity as you refocus?
I think it does, and so that's what I think, when I say I'm stepping it up, I know those leaders are also stepping it up from their side as well. And so Lawrence Wong is someone, as I said, I'd met before, and I met again an hour after he'd just been announced as the incoming Prime Minister in Singapore. We'll be able to do business together really well. Prime Minister Seta in Thailand, obviously new leader as well, and President Marcos, as you can see here in the last year and a half, 2 years, has a very clear vision of where the Philippines goes from here.
Shane Jones has made some comments about the Waitangi Tribunal in relation to Karen Shaw's summons. He's criticised the tribunal, and then he's gone on to say that he's looking forward to reviewing that. Experts have said that amounts to a thinly veiled threat. Are you comfortable with those comments, and does it breach the cabinet level?
Well, look, I think those comments are ill-considered, and we expect all ministers to actually exercise, I think, good judgment in their communications on matters like this. What we need to be focused on is many commentators and others, and we certainly have it as a coalition agreement, to look at the future role of the Waitangi Tribunal going forward, that's something that should happen in a very proper and considered process. So I think the comments are ill-considered.
We've seen big crackdowns on public spending this week. Do you still promise frontline services would be protected?
Well, we want frontline services protected and prioritised, but what I'd say to you is we've been very clear from the beginning. We will stop programs that are not delivering outcomes for New Zealanders. We are going to stop contractors and consultants. We are going to stop wasteful spending. We are going to make sure that we've got efficient back offices. We're going to make sure we haven't got excessive managements of layers of management. We want to be able to free up funds so that we can actually move them to the frontline services, as I kept saying across the piece. So I appreciate it's a difficult time, but actually we have added 18,500 public servants to government since 2017. Part of that is we've tasked the CEOs to generate savings, how they deliver those savings and those constructs that we've given them to prioritise frontline services, make sure that you're putting the money and investment behind projects that are actually working and delivering for New Zealanders and are driving towards those better public service targets that we launched.
And sorry,
what do you say to Māori health professionals who are really worried about those OT cuts?
What I'd say to you is we know OT is a very troubled and challenged organisation. I think we've got a minister there who understands it very, very deeply and is very determined to make sure that we prioritise the interests of the most vulnerable children in New Zealand. We have a huge duty of care to make sure that we deliver and protect them completely. That is something we all take on board very, very seriously. And let's be clear, Oranga Tamariki as an organisation has had failings, and so we are really determined to make sure it is focused on its core task of protecting our most vulnerable. How you organise the resources. Don't just assume just because things are organised in the way they are today is the best way to deliver those outcomes of protecting those young people. So if it is removing of management layers, if it is actually making sure that programs and initiatives that actually aren't working or delivering and reprioritising and reusing that money in different ways, that's a good thing. What I can reassure you is in the budget you will see more investment go into places like Oranga Tamariki and education. But it's about what you do with the money that matters as much as how much money is actually there and how much resources are there. And I think that's a big shift. I appreciate it for everybody to understand, but actually we need to get different outcomes with money, and we need to make that money work harder for us to get those outcomes for New Zealanders.
As well as Shane Jones on the Waitangi Tribunal, David Zeno has said perhaps they should be wound up for their own good. Is that helpful?
Well, again, those comments are ill-considered, and I expect my ministers to actually exercise good judgment on communications of that nature. But what I would say to you is that there is no doubt about it. We are focused on making sure that going forward in a post-treaty settlements world, what is the future role and scope and purpose of Waitangi Tribunal? That needs some thinking. We will work that through in a very proper and comprehensive way in government.
Are you going to give them a serve when you get it back?
Well, I haven't had a chance to talk to them, but that message will be underscored to the ministers. Yep.
Thanks very much.
Collins had a chance to speak to them?
I'm not sure, but I just say to you, those remarks, as I said, I think are ill considered. I think ministers need to exercise good judgment.
Thank you all.
Okay, thanks, Steve. See ya.